Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson, and I've asked Dr. Geordie Mark. He's the Managing Director and CEO of Vital Metals. The ASX code is VML. Now, Vital Metals have been around, but this is, I guess, Vital Metals 2.0. I'm going to go into some of the background, what's coming up, and why we as a community should be potentially having a deeper look into the company. It's a rare earths project up there in the Northwest Territories in Canada. Geordie's coming to me from Canada. Thank you so much, Geordie. Great to see you, and welcome to Making Money Matter.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Glad to be here and glad to talk about Vital today. I think,
if I can start, because this is the first time you've come onto the channel, let's just start with who you are. I mentioned rare earths, but could you just give us an overview?
Vital's an exciting rare earths company, and basically an advanced exploration development stage story, trying to develop one of the largest rare earths assets globally in Canada, and one which we think has a very attractive quality potential in terms of scalability for a North American market. So that's quite an attractive target and aim for us to build into that market, and we think we have the asset and the asset capabilities to be able to deliver into a growing rare earth market.
Before I get into a little bit of history and going forward, you've got a PhD in geology, and I often say to the audience, one of the most important things is who's behind the company. Now, you took this seat, if you like, in late last year. Geordie, why? Because it's had some challenges, Vital, in the past. There's a whole new management around the asset. Was it the asset? Why did you decide to go ahead?
That's a great question, and actually, it's a fold of a few things. Ultimately, I think it is the asset, and it has to be the asset. For me, Upper Tardif, which is part of Nechalarcha, had been ignored since discovery because of other components that the asset and exploration parties looked at. But really, the advent of dramatic change in the EV market and other demand factors for a new age of forward-facing commodity demand, in particular for rare earths, changed for me the quality quotient, the value proposition for Upper Tardif. As I said before, it's one of the world's largest light rare earth-rich deposits globally. It's at surface, and I think ultimately, given that it hasn't had that much attention, it makes a lot of sense to be able to actually pivot into the large-scale story and to feed a North American market where we see a catch-up for EV demand going forward.
I don't want to delve too much into the past, but it would be remiss of me not to make mention of the fact that there's been, I guess, investors would be looking at it saying, well, what's different this time? Because in the past, there was commentary about the fact that Vital Metals would be going into rare earth production. It was all happening. This is going to be a mine. And that was going to happen very quickly. Why didn't that happen? And are you saying that they were doing it, they were looking in the wrong area? Like, what was the challenge with the past? Because I think we need to look at the past to go forward.
I think that's good to contextualize. So thank you for the question. I think look, grade is a big lure, as we see across natural resources, and North T is a high grade small deposit. But really, I think it's about scale, and I think one of the factors for North T was it's a smaller deposit, and it's sort of prone to more migration in other external factors. So inflation factors that come aboard, changes in commodity price, they really affect project economics and economics in the short term. So for me, there's no shortcuts to project timelines. It's about delivering into scale and delivering with purpose and integrity in terms of the methods that you use to go into production. So for us, the pivot to North Tardif or Tardif, Upper Tardif, is important because it's got that large scale to deliver into a market over time. So a very large, potentially long life project is very interesting to be able to develop. And when you have large, long life assets, you have the potential to be durable over cycles. So for me, that was the component. that makes the most sense. And that's something very similar to what we see in other larger copper systems globally. Get the asset that's got scale and they can weather the storm over cycles. So that's what I saw. I like the sector. I like the scale of the asset and its ability to be able to deliver into a market of need.
A market of need. I like that. Why do you like the sector? I thought that was pretty. So why do you like the sector? I mean, I don't know what you like out there, ladies and gentlemen, but rare earths, I kind of go, they're not rare, I don't believe. But this is a big project. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, if you like. I mean, what sort of rare earths have you got? Is it you said it's globally significant. It's a big one, but it's close to surface? Is it easy to process? Is it going to be easy to bring this forward?
So again, good questions. I love the market, and in terms of the underlying demand for rare earths, it's categorically changed over the last decade, predominantly, through EV demand, but also in terms of larger scale focus as a society at large to move towards a low emissions future. And that cobbles together a range of components for demand on what were non-core commodities. So that unfolds a range of commodities into the critical mineral space, but in particular now brings in rare earths into the fray for larger demand components. So I like that broader picture in terms of where we're going for underlying demand for the commodity. So for scale, ultimately it's very large. Key assets in that are neodymium, praseodymium. They go into forming high strength magnets, go into power drives, etc. So these are components that will be part of we'll call it future facing sort of commodity demand sort of network for the next couple of decades. So I like the backdrop for demand. It's good to have an asset of scale and size, and in particular, it has a very interesting composition in terms of it has a very high proportion of the elements of economic interest for us, and that is neodymium, praseodymium, very high relative to a lot of others. And as you were saying, it is basically crops out at surface. It's flat like a pancake. So let's deal with things on a conventional basis. We don't have to go into processes that are more courageous and new for us. We're about conventional. Let's adopt a process where we can go into natural resource extraction through conventional open pit mining. We know how to do that. Conventional processing, and all the way to producing a mineral concentration is what we already do in the base metal cycle, etc., for copper, etc. So it's nothing out of the box. So for me, keep it simple, de-risk the process, understand what we have, and then go through the steps to develop a project into production.
And where you are up in the Northwest Territories, talk to us about, I guess, because it's almost, you've taken it from the previous, if you like, management. This is the new, I guess, Vital Metals 2.0, if you like. Do you have to revitalize relationships up there? Has there been any damage done from the past where they said we're going into mining, and I think Justin Trudeau was there saying, whoopee, isn't this fabulous? Was there any damage done there? Is there a bit of work to be done?
I think there's a bit of work to be done, and mainly, I mean, people are resilient around mining operations.
That's true.
Mining, it happens, and unfortunately, as part of the natural resources cycle, we're price takers. So when commodity prices fluctuate over time, stuff happens. So ultimately, that's why we like a large-scale project and one that has duration potential. The other component is re-domiciling the key management people. So all management at higher levels are actually in Canada. And it's all about, for me, then forward-facing a skills set in terms of the asset knowledge, and that's through our new VP of exploration, and also in terms of social engagement and permitting on the environmental engagements component as well, and that's through our VP of sustainability. Steve has experience in terms of being able to permit large-scale mining operations in Canada and has done that for Detour Lake and Cote Lake. So experience base, and now we're able to start engaging with our key stakeholders in Northwest Territories to communicate our plan. And we put a plan out, a strategic plan, a few weeks ago to deliver into that message, and we'll ramp up our relationships and our exposure over time as we go forward further towards into development and then into production.
Yeah, okay.
So I think we've got a good plan.
You've got a resource update coming up, I think. I think I'm a bit too early asking you when, or do you know when the resource update's coming out?
I think we'll be out soon in a week or two. We'll have a resource update out on Upper Tardif, and now that's that large scale asset that's basically at surface. Yeah. So that we're looking forward to bringing that out and communicating what we think that means.
Talk to us about funding of the project. I know that there was, I think there was a capital raise done. You've had some Chinese interest come into the project. I think they've got a 9.9% ownership of the project. Talk to us about that and the funding and how you're going to take this forward.
That's a good question. Yeah, Shanghai Resources funded us, have a 9.99% stake in the equity position. They don't have a project level interest in Canada or a right to that or an offtake.
Right.
In this case, it's an equity position. But Shanghai Resources is the world's largest integrated producer of rare earths. They've been doing it for decades. They've bloodied their noses on the appropriate methods and products to produce from assets of various styles. So they add a lot of potential in terms of giving us insights in terms of the products that we could potentially produce. So we aim to use that insight to develop a best cost revenue model for our products that we can develop. So I think it's a good synergistic relationship to develop our project over time into a North American market.
That was my next question. I think you almost answered it for me, Geordie. Okay. Where's the market? So even though Shanghai Resources have got 9.9%, the market for your product is going to be North America.
I think North America makes the most sense in terms of if you take where we are, we're an asset where we can boat straight from the project to a railhead and railhead into North America. North America has 3 separations plants currently being built at the moment, and we expect more will be developed over time. It's the world's largest economy, and they've got a catch-up game to play with Europe and China in terms of EV uptake. So we think as a strategic commodity and on a pure cost basis, it's actually much easier to develop a North American supply chain. You have the organic growth there. Let's develop into that. And the other component there is North America. It has a very positive view in terms of critical minerals and rare earths, in terms of government support, in terms of positive engagement around permitting timelines, particularly in Canada, but also in terms of infrastructure related spending on developing rail, road, port facilities and or other downstream infrastructure requirements. So those are large enabling components to develop into a North American market that we wouldn't have elsewhere.
What is your biggest challenge right now, Geordie Mark?
Biggest challenge right now is communicating with the market what our plans are relative to the past. Yeah, that's real. It was history, and that's mining, but it's to communicate where we are relative to from a small scale high grade asset to something that's several hundred times larger, and the process that we'll be able to move that through the development hurdles into production and what that means on a global scale. So for me, it's an asset that was in the weeds, diamond in the rough, so to speak. Northwest Territories isn't a foreign jurisdiction for Australian companies. If we look at BHP and Rio Tinto, still there in terms of the diamond industry. They're operating large-scale assets for decades. So it's a good place to work. The people have very good work ethic, very good skills base, and very positive around natural resources development. So we like where we are. We like the scale that we can develop into. So that's kind of the market presence that we've got to try and develop in terms of our new strategy from the past now into the future.
Geordie, we've got to wrap it up in a moment. What's the news? I'm going to ask you 2 questions. First of all, I just want you to paint for us, if you like, the news flow going forward for the next few months. I'd like to get you back on as we go further down the year, but You've got a resource. I'm talking to you in mid-March. You've got a resource update coming out very soon. So keep an eye out for that, ladies and gentlemen. But what other news is going to be coming out? Are you a busy guy at the moment? What are we looking for?
Oh, there's things happening everywhere for sure. But we're looking for two news releases around resource updates over the course of the year. One in a couple of weeks' time, and another one probably in late Q3, or September. We'll have a range of drill hole results coming out starting soon. Plus, we'll furnish a scoping study, a maiden scoping study on the system later in the year. So we have a range of components around those, but also other allied news around our project, plus a larger uptake getting out, being more market-facing in terms of communicating what we're doing to the market. And for me, that's a big component. So coupling catalysts with actually being out and engaging with our potential shareholders.
Well,
so that's what we're up to.
We'll make sure you come back and keep updating us on what's going on. Let's wrap it up, if you like, tie it up in a nice, neat little bow, Geordie. And if you can just communicate with our audience, 3 reasons, I like 3 reasons, 3 reasons why you think they should be sitting up and taking notice of Vital Metals right now.
Look, basically it's a 2.0 story. It's new, it's catalyst driven for 2024, lots of results to come out, where we've got a new team coming and driving the project forward in country, in a country that has a positive viewpoint in terms of what we're doing around critical minerals. And also we have a lot of components there that differentiate us in terms of size of the asset, its relative simplicity to produce a concentrate, and the nature and concentration of the elements in question differentiate us versus many others in terms of the relative concentration of things like neodymium, praseodymium. So we have large-scale assets that are of interest to a range of parties. We'll be able to communicate those going forward. So it's about catalysts, it's about simplicity, it's about conventional potential for processing and mining on a conventional process, which just hasn't been spoken about before Tardif. So we think that's something new, and we feel ultimately through communicating those messages to the market with catalysts, we'll look to drive forward.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Now, I've got to remind you as well, ladies and gentlemen, Geordie is the MD and the CEO, but more importantly, he's got a PhD in geology. Who better to try and figure out this rare earth? But as he said earlier, it's right at surface. It's like a pancake. But they're doing it in a much more, I guess, considered way, doing the steps, getting the work done. Lots of news flow to come. Watch this space. But for now, Dr. Geordie Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the journey, on the channel, I should say. Can't get my words out this morning. We'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for joining me.
Great. Thanks, Kerry. Happy to be on.